This is Katrin with Disability Rights New York. Welcome to our podcast, Empire State of Rights, closed captioned. We are here to bring you information on the most relevant topics regarding disability rights and advocacy. Today we welcome Lee Redeye, Associate Attorney at Lippis, Mathias, Wexler, Freedman, LLP, and DRNY's Executive Director, Tim Clune. They are joining me today to discuss the Native American Legal Assistance Clinic and the collaboration with DRNY. Thank you both for being here today.
Great to be here, Katrin. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Lee, thank you for coming on. Let's start by talking about what the Native American Legal Assistance Clinic's purpose is and why is there a need for it? What about this clinic is different?
All right. So the Native American Legal Assistance Clinic was an idea I had probably in my first year of practice. In law school, I had an opportunity to work with the Southwest Indian Law Clinic as part of my programming for law school. It was a required course. And really what we did there was we did actual representation of indigent individuals who were enrolled Native Americans or were living on an Indian reservation in New Mexico, where I went to school. So that kind of sparked an interest in kind of working pro bono for Native Americans in general. And when I moved back to Buffalo after law school, there was not much in terms of legal assistance for Native Americans that I could find. There were a couple centers like Native American Community Services who helped their members or their constituency find legal services, but there was nothing direct. And so, I kind of had this idea. Well, then I worked at a different legal assistance clinic, just a general one that was open to, anybody who walked in. And I wanted to target more towards the urban Indian community here in Buffalo. And so I couldn't find anything. And it just on spur of the moment, I called a partner here at the firm, and I knew he was involved in legal aid, and he had been working closely with the Volunteer Lawyers Project from Erie County. And so I just asked him, like, hey, how would I go about setting up a clinic if I wanted to, or, if I got some funds together, how would I do this? I'll dedicate my time. So we're not worried about having an attorney, but what's the infrastructure that needs to be in place? And luckily he hooked me up with Bob Alardo from VLP, who basically was like, hey, if you can get the location and, a minimal fee to cover our expenses, then we would be happy to bring you under VLP's umbrella. And fortunately, I had, a couple weeks prior, had a conversation with Michael Martin, who's the director of Native American Community Services. And, I kind of pitched the idea and said, like, look, I'm just kind of in the planning stage. I'm feeling things out. But if I did put something together, could we use your facilities to host these events? And he was on board. He didn't charge us anything to come in. And so really it was just bringing all those pieces together. And then the firm was generous enough to donate the money to cover the costs for VLP. And that's pretty much how it got started. And the purpose really is to assist low-income Native Americans here in Buffalo, New York, but also in the surrounding tribal communities with legal aid. So typically what happens is somebody will come in, they'll tell us their legal issue, and we'll give them some preliminary advice, but generally we have to send them to another location to actually get representation. We didn't take on any representation at our clinic. And there was a profound need for it. I think the previous year before we started, Volunteer Lawyers Project serves, thousands of people every year. But I believe the number of Native Americans they served before we started the clinic, I think in the entire year was something like 17. And after about 6 months of operation, the Native American Legal Assistance Clinic had served close to 50. So there was a need that wasn't being met that I think, this clinic really kind of filled in that gap. And I apologize for the long-winded answer, but that's, I kind of wanted to give the background of it and all the people who helped make it a reality, because it wasn't just me by myself out here working. It was collaboration. And then, of course, after we got it going, Will reached out to me from Disability Rights of New York, and that was kind of a perfect fit because we do have tons of people coming in with disability questions. And I really have no experience in that area of law. It's a very discrete area of law that, people spend their entire lives practicing in. And I just do, commercial litigation and Indian law litigation. So I never had any opportunity to explore that side. So Will was invaluable in that sense. And there were a lot of people who came in just specifically to ask him questions about their disability rights. So thank you guys for, sending him out there, and, we enjoyed having him.
We appreciate all the background. And Tim, this is a perfect segue into talking about how DRNY did get involved and what our role is and why it was so important.
So back in 2017, we were doing outreach to the Native communities across New York State, and we happened to receive a fellowship application from Will Transfer. And Will Transfer is the Will that Lee is referring to. Will was a third-year law student at Notre Dame, and he wanted to do a fellowship with DRNY and to focus specifically on providing special education representation and advocacy to the Native American communities. So we got this fellowship up and running in 2018. After Will graduated, he joined us. And during those 2 years, Will did a lot of work to create relationships. And one of the greatest relationships that he was able to cultivate was that with Lee. And to be part of this clinic, because DRNY can provide that particular niche of services to the Native American population, out west. We also want to make sure that we are reaching out across the state to all of the Native communities so that it is known that we are a resource. But for Lee to have opened the door for us to come in has been a tremendous uptick on the amount of advocacy and information that we can provide, because I think a lot of people across New York State are not aware of the services that DRNY can provide.
And that's a great way to look at how we're looking at 2020, right? So Will started this in 2018 and he had a couple of years in. I know that you were going to head out west in February or March of 2020. And so we've all been impacted by the pandemic and COVID-19 in different ways, and the clinic was affected as well. And so, Lee, do you want to talk a little bit about the pandemic and how it's not only affected the clinic, but the community as a whole?
Yeah, I just want to say I think it's kind of funny that you guys call coming out to Buffalo going out west, because typically when I think of that, I think about going to New Mexico, or that's what I say when I'm going out to New Mexico is I'm going out west. So it's just a funny way to hear that. But COVID-19 had a significant impact on the clinic when it first started. Well, not when it first started, but when the kind of lockdowns, statewide, countywide lockdowns started occurring, the Native American Community Services Center, so NACS, their center actually closed down for a time and really had very limited services. I know they were doing everything they could to provide for their members, the population they serve, but given at the height of the pandemic, I think that there were just a lot of concerns about, the elderly coming in there and children, and just, they didn't want to have a large gathering place. So we started doing remote for a few months, and we just didn't have the same kind of results for remote legal services. Basically, we weren't getting many calls. I would have my, phone by me and the intake sheet for 2 hours once a month. And really, I would receive maybe one call the entire night. Whereas, typically we could expect, not huge numbers, but, 3, 4, 5 people. I think, our best night was, 12 or 15 people. So, we weren't doing large numbers, but we were making a dent in the legal need here for the Native American community. And I just felt like it wasn't really a viable thing to keep continuing in a remote capacity. So we discontinued it, and we are certainly planning to start up here in the coming months. I want to make sure, I get my vaccinations, that the staff, I don't know about their vaccination plan, but, just that we can get more people vaccinated, then, I think people will feel safer about coming into kind of confined spaces, because we have to do these interviews in somewhat small rooms. Not that they're not closets by any sense, but they're not, ballrooms or anything. They're kind of tight spaces, and I know people feel a little bit uncomfortable. I myself feel a little bit uncomfortable in those confined types of spaces. And the impact of COVID on the Native American community, I believe, was disproportionate to the general population, and not in terms of like numbers. I know there were some tribes that had really bad numbers. I mean, everybody knows about the story of the Navajo Nation and all the suffering that's gone on their reservation due to COVID. But just, in my little neck of the woods here, we did have somewhat higher numbers, but I think they were mostly in line with the counties in which the tribes were situated. But the disproportionate effect was with regard to adverse health impacts. So Native Americans were suffering adverse health impacts from COVID at much higher rates than other populations. So that's part of why I think there was this hesitancy to kind of immediately start congregating as soon as everything opened back up. And, for my part, I would never want to even be in a position where I thought that maybe I had COVID and gave it to somebody. So I was just really cautious about this. But now that things are looking up, more people are getting vaccinated, I think that reopening the clinic in the near future is certainly on my list of things to do. And so I'm hoping, sometime end of summer, maybe, if things are looking up, then, we would be probably opening the doors back up and inviting DRNY to come back and help us out. And I think, moving forward, this was the plan last year, but moving forward, I would like to see maybe our materials that we circulate could have mentioned DRNY if that's appropriate, just because I think that will drive more people in the door and kind of help us both out. My goal is to serve the Native American community. And I know DRNY's goal is to serve, the state of New York, but maybe they could help me serve the Native population here. So I know you guys are willing to do it. I just, had to do a shameless pitch on air.
So Lee, let me give you the shameless answer. We would be honored to continue this relationship and committing to you that we want to be a partner here. Before I was thinking back, sometimes the beginning of the pandemic seems like yesterday, other times it feels interminable. And I looked back and I have an email that I sent to my legal director back on February 28th that said, beginning March 1st, I want to rotate a staff attorney with Will to attend the clinics, right? So that went out on, February 28th. We closed our physical offices on March 14th. And here we are over a year later. But we are committed to ensuring that our services are known, right? I mean, the demand is always more than the supply of resources that we have to offer even. But I want us to know what the issues are and what the asks are so that we can make a determination how best we can use our limited resources to help. Just an aside, your comment about out west, it's all about perspective, right? So I was born downstate in the New York City area, and I grew up down there. So for me, for 30 years, upstate was anything above the Throgs Neck Bridge, right? So Westchester. Now I live outside of Albany, and upstate certainly is not Westchester. So touche to you. But we do want to be a partner with you on this. You're very modest about your efforts to make this a reality. I had said before we started that you are a rock star, and you are. The effort that you put in, you had a vision for this. And, we are grateful for that vision. And we're grateful that we are part of helping you, come to fruition.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I try not to, or I tend not to want to take a lot of credit, just because I feel like there was a lot of people, involved, and I wouldn't want them to feel like their contributions weren't appreciated. So I do always make it a point to kind of point out the people who made this possible. And I had the vision, but they made it a reality. So I don't feel like it would be right for me to kind of forget them. And I know that's not what you're asking, but that's just kind of like where I come from on this, is that, I want to make sure that I give credit where credit is due, because that's important to me. So, but I appreciate your comments, and I hope that I can live up to the rock star label at some point in the near future.
I agree with you, recognizing that nothing gets done solo for the most part, right? And this I recognize, but the efforts of Will Tronser to make the connection and for the two of you to develop, the relationship that you have is, there's some serendipity there. And I think it is filling a gap. And by the way, Will said to say hello to you. I was talking with him earlier today, so I said I would pass that on. He said, hope you're well, and he's going to reach out to you soon.
That's great. I look forward to hearing from him. I always enjoyed speaking with Will.
Well, you both have given so much great information, and you touched a little bit on about the future. Let's talk about what the future looks like. I know, Lee, you have some plans, and Tim, I know we have a commitment to the future here too. If you two could talk a little bit about that and what the future looks like for the clinic and for our involvement.
Yeah, sure. So the first priority is to get the clinic back up and running, which won't take much. I mean, we already have the agreements. I think, we would certainly want to include DRNY in all we executed last time was a memorandum of understanding, basically just laying out Lipis will offer up the services of myself and will donate to cover the costs of VLP. VLP will actually run the operation, provide intake, and then NACS would provide the facility. I would envision that you guys would assist us in providing the legal support. I don't think there's an ask for any money here, but I know that the legal services that you would assist us with will cost you something. So that's kind of the immediate goal. But since I started the clinic, my primary objective was to provide actual legal representation for people. And I knew that the model that I had created wouldn't support that, but I was planning on starting to look for alternative sources of funding. And it just so happens last week, I was talking this over with my fiance, and I was telling her, like, I've got to think of some way to come up with money so that we can get an attorney to not only just come to the clinic, but represent the people that come to the clinic. Because the biggest issue I had with the clinic was that people would come in, we'd give them advice, but then we had to send them somewhere else. And a lot of times I got the sense that people had already been through that process, that they had went somewhere and that place had sent them to us. And now we're sending them to another provider who may take down their information again, make them tell their story for the third time, and then shift them off to another provider. So my goal in the immediate future, after I get the clinic back up and running, is to secure funding for full-time attorney. And I would hope to do that through VLP. And I hope they don't hear this podcast before I get a chance to talk to Bob Alardo, because I haven't actually run this by Bob yet, but I would really like to raise money for VLP to hire an attorney. I can't do it, and I don't have an organization to do it. So, it would really be on behalf of VLP in order to provide us with a staff attorney. So that's a conversation now that I think I need to have sooner rather than later. But I don't really think it'll be a big problem. Bob's a great guy, and so I'm sure he'll love the idea. But speaking of last week, I got an email as I was probably the night after I was speaking to my fiance. I got an email about a federal grant that's now supporting Native American legal aid. And so I'm really hoping that I could apply for that, or that VLP might apply for that. And if they do get selected, then we could provide an attorney here in Buffalo that could, service the legal needs of the Native American community, because that would be the ultimate goal. And pretty much I could retire after that, just ride off into the sunset. No, I'm joking. I wouldn't do that. But that, I think, would be the culmination of all the efforts, and really just kind of put, the cherry on top of this is to have an attorney on staff. And of course, DRNY's involvement. Tim's already said he wants a staff attorney to come out there. So that would be beneficial as well. I don't know what the staff attorney would do, but again, it's just because I'm not very familiar with how the disability rights of New York operates. But I know Will, when he was in there, he was giving great advice and people seemed to come away with the answers that they needed. And so he wasn't representing them, but I never heard a question asked that he didn't know the answer to. So, that's invaluable at these types of events is, a lot of times I feel like I'm a little out of my element because they're asking me about, a criminal law matter or a disability rights question, and I just have to kind of generalize and then tell them, well, I don't really know, but here's a number you can call and they'll know. So it was great to have Will there to answer those questions, and I'd like to continue that, and whatever else that DRNY is willing to assist with, I'm sure we could find a way to make it work.
Absolutely. And what I envision is you being able to say, well, why don't you go talk to that lawyer over there from Disability Rights New York? I mean, in a nutshell, what we do is we represent people who have disabilities and that the issue is actually related to the disability. And it can span, a whole spectrum of legal cases, but we don't supplant services that are already available. So for instance, if someone is otherwise eligible for appointed counsel, say in a criminal matter or in a family court matter, we would not be involved in that because we supplement but not supplant. So they would have to go there first. But there are a host of many issues that we would be able to provide direct advice as to what to do, but also to help people become a little bit more of a self-advocate. What we do is we try to use our resources to the greatest extent possible so that maybe you can deal with this issue should it ever come again. But there may be issues that we want to take on directly, but we're not going to know unless we are there. And we are federally funded. 99% of our funding comes from the federal government. And we track demographics. And what has been a priority for me is to make a difference in all of the historically underserved communities in New York State. And the Native American community is, at the top of that list. And this is a way to do it. I mean, I have been on the St. Regis territory quite a bit, over the years regarding beneficiaries of Social Security, but it's a bit of a distrust. And what we're trying to do is to create the perspective that we are an ally and we want to be an ally and how we can go about doing that. And having a partnership with you is the first step towards making that happen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And anything I can do to help you guys get the word out or bridge that gap, I'd be happy to do so. So, don't hesitate to reach out to me if there's any questions. I don't know everybody, but if you're looking to speak with somebody out here, I'm sure I know somebody who knows them. So it's a pretty small community in that sense. So if there's anything I can do, don't hesitate to ask.
Lee, Tim, thank you so much for this conversation. It was great to hear you both talk about what we're doing for the future and how our partnership is going to grow. I certainly look forward to having a follow-up podcast where we can hear about what's happening maybe in the fall as things start to open up a little bit. Thank you both so much for being here today, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
All right. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And it was nice to meet you, Tim. I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
Oh, we absolutely will, Lee. It's my pleasure. So thank you.
Empire State of Rights Closed Captioned has been brought to you by Disability Rights New York, your source for disability rights and advocacy. If you enjoyed our program, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this post. If there is a subject you would like us to discuss, please email podcast@drny.org or comment below. Tune in next Wednesday, where we'll bring you more information on disability rights in the state of New York. The closed captioned and ASL version of this podcast is available on our YouTube channel. To listen to more Empire State of Rights closed captioned, follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.